morning.
Good morning to everyone.
Yes, it's good to be near the church, our beautiful church. Welcome to our spiritual home.
We miss everybody.
Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tarpon Springs, located in the heart of the walkable Tarpon Springs Historic District and known as the home of the Innes paintings. We are a liberal community for all ages, promoting spiritual growth, social justice, and the arts. I'm Reverend Kristina Spaude, minister here of UUCTS. I'm glad you are here. I hope that you find meaning in today's service. Please consider joining us on a Sunday morning when we gather to worship as a community every week beginning at 10:30 a.m. on Zoom, or drop in for a more personal visit to one of our coffee hours, starting at 11:30 on Sundays on Zoom. If you are new to the area or just learning about Unitarian Universalism, we'd love to meet you in one of our newcomer discussions, which are held on the second Sunday of each month at 12:15. Please refer to our website for information about how to connect with us on Zoom. Our service associate will now begin today's service. Let us enter this sacred time with open minds and open hearts.
Greetings and welcome, dear friends. We welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tarpon Springs and our virtual service. We are so glad that you have found us. My name is Betty Lou Cummins, and I am delighted to be your service associate today. We offer a warm welcome to all who are with us in our virtual reality. We are a church of many welcomes. I welcome you now, and I hope that we can welcome you in person on a future pandemic-free day at our location in Tarpon Springs. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe in the worth and dignity of each human being. All people on earth have an equal claim to life, liberty, and justice. And no idea, ideal, or philosophy is superior to a single human life. We welcome all thoughtful people to journey through life's mystery with us. We want to walk with you on the way of holiness and happiness, justice and service. We hope that you feel the blessings of love through your time in our presence. As a congregation, we seek to create a diverse and accepting community based on the principles of our faith, Unitarian Universalism. And we are drawn together in voluntary loyalty. We believe that we need not think alike to love alike. Our message today will be brought to us jointly by the Reverend Kristina Spaude and Mark Hopkins, speaking on the subject of becoming more who we want to be. The musical portion of the service will be provided by our musical director, Bonnie Whitehurst. We come now to our chalice lighting. May we light this chalice with the words of Sean Trapp. Our chalice reminds us that the fire within ourselves is the same fire that illuminates the universe. It is our reminder that all is connected, even though the space of the void is vast, and our experience here is but a blip in the cosmic timeline. This flame is our promise that in our smallness and our short time on this earth, that we live intently and deeply, with love for one another, with honesty and integrity, to be guided by rational thought and critical thinking, and with a sense of shared responsibility. For as the late astronomer Carl Sagan reminded us, this pale blue dot is the only home we've ever known.
Come into the light. There's a place for you here, and you'll be alright. With your friends gathered near, reach up for the light. There is wisdom in the air. Come into the light. Let your heart lead you there. Our story today is called The Animal School, and it is written in two parts. The first was written by George Rivas, and the second was written by Sarah Gonzalez. Part 1. Once upon a time, the animals decided that they should do something meaningful to meet the problems of the new world, so they organized a school. They adopted an activity curriculum of running, climbing, swimming, and flying. To make it easier to administer, all of the animals took all of the same subjects. The seal was excellent at swimming. In fact, she was better than her instructor. However, she made only passing marks in running and was very poor at flying. Since she had so much trouble in flying, she had to drop her swimming class and do extra flying practice. This caused her tail to become badly bruised, meaning that she dropped to an average mark in swimming. Fortunately, average was acceptable, therefore nobody worried about it, except the seal. The rabbit started at the top of the class in running, but developed a nervous twitch in his leg muscles because he had so much makeup work to do in swimming. The squirrel was excellent in climbing, but she encountered constant frustration in flying class because her teacher insisted that she start from the ground up instead of from the treetop down. She developed cramps from overexertion, so she ended up with a C in climbing and a D in running. The eagle was a real problem student and was severely disciplined for being a nonconformist. In climbing class, he beat all of the others to the top, but insisted on using his own way of getting there. Part 2. The animals gathered together a few months after the school opened to evaluate how things were going. After an hour of reports about how many animals were showing improvements in a variety of subjects, but some were complaining of fatigue and frustration, the seal raised her flipper to ask a question. "What is the purpose of this school?" she asked. "To do something meaningful to meet the problems of the new world," said the elephant, who had an excellent memory. "Exactly," said the seal. "I'm not sure this school is giving us the best support to go about changing the world, though." "What do you mean?" asked the squirrel. "What would you suggest we do?" "I think," said the seal, "that we should be learning how to work together. We don't all have to be the best at everything. We just need to learn how to use our strengths together. Then we can accomplish so much more." The animals were skeptical, but they were exhausted from the way that the school had been run for the first months, so they agreed to give it a try. The seal wrote up a new curriculum, which she called the shared leadership approach. The eagle and the squirrel practiced together until the squirrel could launch herself from the tree and the eagle could launch himself from the ground, timed so perfectly that the squirrel would land on the eagle's back. The squirrel would collect nuts from the trees while the eagle flew. The two of them flew farther than anyone else in flying class and collected more nuts than anyone else in climbing class. The seal and the rabbit practiced together as well. They started in the pool with the rabbit on the seal's back. Then halfway across the pool, the rabbit jumped to the shore and ran around the track so fast that he could jump back onto the seal's back on her way back across the pool. They added up more laps of the track and pool than anyone else, and they did it in half the time. All the animals had natural strengths, but by working together, everyone learned more about the skills and techniques necessary to improve in every subject. Plus, they didn't need to overstretch themselves anymore since they could work together and lift each other up whenever needed. The animal school was at peace.
Oh, the church is built of neither brick nor stone, for it's love that's the spirit of this church. It's a shelter fashioned from our hearts alone. Yes, it's love that's the spirit of this church. Yes, it's love, for it's love. Yes, it's love that's the spirit of this church. Not the walls or steeple, but a gathered people is what makes up the spirit of this church. It is not stained glass that makes these windows bright, for it's love that's the spirit of this church. They're illuminated by compassion's light. Yes, it's love that's the spirit of this church. For it's love, yes, it's love. For it's love that's the spirit of this church. Not the walls or steeple, but a gathered people is what makes up the spirit of this church. We've no sacred altar that is carved of wood, for it's love that's the spirit of this church. It is consecrated by the greater good. Yes, it's love that's the spirit of this church. Oh, it's love, for it's love. Yes, it's love that's the spirit of this church. Not the walls or steeple, but a gathered people is what makes up the spirit of this church. It's not the sanctuary, not the pulpit, not the parking lot, and not the windows, not the paintings, not the musician. No, it's people that are making up this church.
In becoming more of who we want to be, let's keep in mind that who we are is fundamentally linked to our relationship with others. Reverend Pamela Rumenick writes, "Why community? To remember that one is not a whole number, that we need both roots and wings, that strength comes from relationship and mutuality, that we know life in and through one another." And Reverend Mark Morrison Reed has stated, "The central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. To be religious at least as a Unitarian Universalist, is to commit to being in relationship with one another. That's why we covenant. We commit to being together on our spiritual journeys. We commit to growing together, challenging each other, dreaming together, failing and making mistakes together, and coming back to each other. In a religious community, we learn not only who we want to be as individuals, but what we want the world to be. And in a religious community, we work to make this world better and that world possible. We must collaborate and commit to working together. As individuals, we try new things, and sometimes they don't resonate the way we had planned, or they don't seem to work at all. Other things are so wonderful we can't imagine being or doing without them. It's the same in congregations. We try new things, tweak them, or sometimes throw them out altogether. We learn about ourselves and what we need, and how to best meet those needs at this moment. We don't expect that the answers we find will last forever, just for this time. What's important is that we are in this together. We have had and may again have hard times, just as we have had and will surely have happy times. We're committed to moving in the same direction, not necessarily at top speed, but at a speed that allows us to keep moving forward together.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Stay in my heart. All the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rising the sea, move in the giving life the shape of justice, roots will be close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another, help one another. Love is the spirit of this church. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law.
It's time for the offering for the work and the welfare of this church. Please go to our website, uutarpon.org, and click on the donate button. Or please send your checks to 57 Reed Street. The entire address is right there on your screen. And thank you.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Hi, Reverend Kristina. I'm really glad to have this opportunity with you. Looking forward to it, in fact, so we can have some exchange about something that I think is pretty important for the church. I've had the good opportunity to hear you talk about shared leadership, but I'm wondering if we could begin by you explaining to everyone listening what you think shared leadership is and why you think this is a good time for our church.
Yeah. So I'm excited to do this too, because we've had such great discussions, and I think this is going to be a really good opportunity, hopefully, to capture a lot of the discussions like that we've been having. So starting with the idea of shared leadership, I hope that it is what it sounds like it might be, where we're involving more people in providing leadership opportunities throughout the congregation. And what exactly it's going to look like, I can't say specifically, in part because I think that it's going to look like different things in different places.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that we've sort of been thinking about for the board possibly is having co-presidents. I don't know if we'll go in that direction or not, but that's something that we've been talking about, kind of like some of the different committees are structured differently. So thinking about social justice, where there's one person that sort of has the role of the lead person, but another person is doing facilitation. The thing about shared leadership is that we want to be bringing in more people to have the opportunity to help support and distribute to some extent the workload that all the different parts of the congregation are holding right now.
Does it sound too oversimplified to say that all the work still needs to be done and the responsibilities are still there? They're just shared, distributed, divided up differently?
Yes, I think that is a good definition. I think that one of the other things, though, that we will be looking at is possibly that maybe some of this work doesn't actually need to be done. Maybe this isn't stuff that we need to be doing anymore. And that will be part of our review process as we're exploring this, is that the things that aren't helpful to the ministry of the congregation are things that we might say that we're not going to do anymore.
What struck you as this is a good time for us to be making a transition like this?
This has been a really helpful model in other congregations that I know that I've served or have supported in other ways in the past. One of the things that really made it clear that this would be a helpful direction to move in for this congregation at this particular time is the fact that Kathy is ready to rotate off the board from being board president, and there was nobody willing to step up and fill that role.
So what did that signal to you about the church? Anything in particular, or just needed to get the work done?
So we do need to get the work done, but one of the things that signaled is that the position has grown to be too large. that the tasks and responsibilities that the president has been fulfilling have gotten to be too much for one person to manage easily by themselves. And so essentially the position has become unsustainable. And so what we want is to sort of take and evaluate what those tasks are that our president has been handling for a variety of reasons. And this isn't to place any blame in any particular thing. It's the result of multiple factors, like not having had a minister for a period of time. And Kathy has been wearing multiple hats for many years, having been the treasurer, having done buildings and grounds, having, with the congregation, having gone through these sinkholes and all sorts of other eventful experiences together. And so to some extent, it's in part just that Kathy's really good at doing a lot of things and has sort of acquired all of these things. And that there hasn't been the time to slow down and process through whether or not that's helpful or effective for the congregation as we're trying to move forward together. And so as Kathy was thinking about stepping away from the board after more than 2 years of service, there's been a question about how do we fill those shoes, right? And the answer is simply that we're not looking to fill those shoes. We're looking to move the ministry of the congregation forward.
What's interesting is that reminds me of something I used to use in classes I taught on leadership in the healthcare setting. And I would just throw out the question to the room, name a great leader. And frequently there would be answers like Martin Luther King, Bill Gates, Barack Obama. And we would say we've just identified high profile, charismatic, high achievers. And then I'd ask the question, can we come to view everyone in this room as a leader? Can we come to view ourselves as a leader? And going back to what you described a bit earlier about the things that need done and the different characteristics, and in the story for all ages, we all bring something. So maybe we're, in part, redefining the notion of leadership. It's not just the heroic, one person charging ahead. If that fits, and you're nodding your head, how would we begin to kind of see that play out among ourselves in a congregation?
So the whole idea of the heroic leader is, we see it over and over again throughout history, right? And it's wonderful. And when people use their power for good, it offers the rest of us a lot. And one of the challenges of heroic leadership is that it's really hard to replace one leader with another, right? You don't go from a Martin Luther King straight into somebody else. Witness the last 60 years, 50 years. And so I think what we're trying to look at right now is sort of more like Stacey Abrams, right? Who has been working for the last 10 years in Georgia to change the system, to support grassroots leaders all over the place, to champion their people in their locations, giving them what they need, the resources, the tools, the training, whatever they need to be the best leaders they can be. Because what really makes a person a leader is being able to care for your people. Whatever people are around you that you care for, that is what makes you a leader. Being a manager doesn't make you a leader, right? Being a minister doesn't make you a leader. We all have met these people. I know we've all met these people, and we know that the title does not make someone a leader, but caring for people does, and demonstrates what in our setting as a congregation, what your particular passion around your ministry is. And that's what we want to be doing. We want to be inviting more people in and supporting people, for everyone to feel like they have ownership and leadership over some part of congregational life.
I love hearing that. That is so reinforcing. Okay, the next question is kind of a loaded question in that I know where I want it to go, but I'm going to put it out there for other people to hear it. Are there reasons beyond sharing the load that make shared leadership a good step for this church? What signals might we be sending beyond ourselves to other people about us?
So one of the reasons why I am particularly passionate about shared leadership, apart from my work with congregations and apart from my experience with time banking, which was briefly alluded to during Reverend Bob's service on the 27th, he talked about my experiences with time banking, which in short is an opportunity for service exchange between people that helps build community. And my work with time banking was really lit by a passionate, charismatic kind of leader who also worked really hard to have the successor roles sort of start putting down the path for successorship years before she was ready to leave, because she recognized that about herself. But connecting people with their passions and being able to give back to other people. So all that being said, part of my passion around wanting to bring shared leadership to a congregation is because we are in a different place in the world right now. Whereas in the 50s, maybe even into the 60s and 70s, people were excited about joining churches and, were eager to get involved and to be seated on committees, and viewing that placement as a way of carrying the church's mission and work forward. And that has changed. And one of the ways that that has changed is that people don't always have all the bandwidth to join a church, if they even have the interest in joining a church, right? We've all seen how over the last couple of generations, numbers of church attendance and membership have dropped dramatically. One of the things that shared leadership does is invites people who are younger and who come from more marginalized communities. It gives them an opportunity to see themselves possibly reflected in an institution, to see space for themselves to be reflected in an institution. Folks who are younger, folks who come from more marginalized communities tend to operate from more models of shared leadership than the traditional church model that we've been experiencing for years. And so one of the things that I've realized in our conversations over the last couple of months is that we talk in general about how representation matters, right? It's important to see a female minister. It's important to see Kamala Harris as, our vice president-elect, as a Black woman, as
we want younger members.
And in our church, we say we want younger members and we want people of color and we want all these different things. And it's important to have people join you. And it's important when we're doing the work of inviting them in to demonstrate that we're doing our work to make space and say that we truly actually want you to be with us. We want you to be with us so much. We are opening our arms and we are opening our organization to look like something that can both bring meaning to you and have you bring meaning to it, right? There's that sharing of passion and excitement and talent and skill and growth, right? Spiritual growth. And by being able to change the way that things have been done, we give people the cues that we are actually interested in having you be a part of our community.
Kind of to carry that to another metaphor, we had said we would really welcome and want young families and children in our church and among us. But it wasn't until we actually had a children's room and a child care provider, and then if you build it, they will come.
Right.
And we began to have some children. So by building space in the sense of a signal, a cue, as you mentioned, that we are not as hierarchical as we once were, that we're becoming more involved and open. That's pretty good.
And by demonstrating our investment in the dream that we're trying to fulfill, right? That we're not just doing things and hoping that people will acclimate or assimilate to the way that we've been doing things for years and years and years, right? That we're trying new things because we want to be
we want to become a different community than just what we have right now.
When I worked in a hospital system, I was involved with the neonatal intensive care unit, and I got to know their work pretty well. And they had a philosophy, an overarching principle for the good of the babies. They would literally run that filter through every decision. And if they were asked to send a representative to a hospital-wide meeting, that would be inconvenient. They'd have to rearrange schedules. Someone would have to work overtime. They just go, yeah, we'll do it. That's just an inconvenience for us. It doesn't impact the babies. But if they were asked to change visiting hours to comply with the rest of the hospital, they'd go, nope. We need our visiting hours open 24/7 because you never know when a parent needs to come or be relieved. And the pushback was, well, we'd have to have different security at the front desk. They go, we'll have it. That's about our babies, for the good of our babies. So it mattered a great deal to them, and everything was directed by that. So have you sensed something among us that we could call whatever it would be, our for the good of the babies, our overarching principle? What is it about us that would make us want to share and unite? Have you sensed anything?
So I'm not exactly sure where you were hoping to go with this, but my response is that this is sort of the purpose of the mission statement, right? I would love to redo the mission statement. I'll just say that. I would love to redo it because I think that it's a little generic. But I think it also gives us cues about the direction that we're hoping to move in. And so when we look at the mission statement of this particular congregation that says that we are a liberal community of all ages, affirming, is it affirming? Promoting spiritual growth, social justice, and the arts. So what does that tell us about us? That we are a liberal community, which we are indeed. I don't know that we could not be a liberal community as Unitarian Universalists. So we'll just assume that's sort of baked into who we are. But for all ages, right? So we want to be a community for all ages. That's part of our aspiration. And we do have people across the age spectrum. We have them sort of more heavily distributed in some parts than others. But that's part of our aspiration, right? Is to be a community for all ages. And it is a community for all ages. We promote spiritual growth. And so we're looking at, I don't know, because I wasn't there when you guys made up this mission statement, when you guys co-created it. But spiritual growth to me is both doing the inner work yourself and doing the growth as a community. So doing shared spiritual growth. Social justice, which takes a myriad of forms. And then the arts. And that's one of the things that really struck me about this congregation when I read the mission statement for the first time. And every time I share it, my colleagues are always like, that is really interesting. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Because it's so unique. I mean, that truly is a very unique thing to this congregation. But the way that the congregation works to embody that, that particular part of their mission, I think is really embraced. And I think that the other parts of it are embraced too. I think it's just been harder to practice those for a variety of reasons, including the pandemic, including not having been in the building for a long time because of the sinkholes. And so there's other things that have been part of that. But so the mission is sort of for the babies for us. And that is how the congregation should always be orienting themselves in terms of doing their ministry. The ministry of the congregation is defined by the mission.
Yeah, that was the direction I had in mind was, what is our mission? And not necessarily the words, it may be the words, but, and I've always hated the phrase, failure is not an option. But if we were to say to ourselves, what is it that we cherish? What would this community, this world miss if UUCTS stopped existing? And if we recognize what they would miss that's uniquely ours, and that we would, for the good of the babies, hold on to it, struggle to maintain it, that then would say to me that whatever that is, I'll participate.
Right.
Let's figure out how and when. Okay.
Yeah, so the key parts of that for this particular community, I think, would be being a liberal religious faith in this area. By far, Unitarian Universalists and our particular brand of Unitarian Universalism is much more liberal than the rest of the houses of worship throughout Pinellas County, especially where we are. The aspiration about being a community of all ages, I do see that deeply across the board in conversations that we have. I see that people want more younger people, more children, more young adults, and just more people across the age spectrum to be participating in the community. Social justice is a huge passion in this congregation, as it is in many others. And of course, like, everybody has their thing that they're really excited about, and that's wonderful. And I think that that is part of what draws our connection with the greater community, is wanting to be participating in whatever way we can with different events and partnerships throughout of doing food justice, to address food insecurity, racial justice, LGBTQ stuff. So all sorts of different things. And then the arts, I think, is a really big one for this congregation too.
I'm going to track back a little bit. You mentioned earlier that the board is going through some period of study and discernment, and we'll make some thoughtful change. And at the end of January, we'll have elected officers, and there'll be some changes there. But most of us aren't elected officers, and most of us aren't serving as committee chair people. So how does this transition relate to most of us who aren't going to be in a formal elected or chair position?
That is a good question. And right now, one of the ways that will manifest for people who aren't necessarily in what we might call traditional leadership roles is that the transition to shared leadership isn't something that can just happen because the leaders that we've designated think that it would be helpful, right? Everybody sort of needs to be on board, participating at some level, being aware of what's going on, and engaging in those conversations. Another way that this will impact people who aren't in traditional leadership roles is that I'm hoping that this will democratize the congregation a little bit more, or maybe a lot more. I'm not sure. I've only been with you guys for like 5 months, so I'm not positive entirely about the culture, but
5 months.
I know it's only been like 5 months, but I think that it will invite more conversation for people as we're thinking about changing, as we're thinking about trying different things. I'll go back to the example of what we just went through with trying to change what I started calling the Sunday morning experience. We had coffee hour at 11 o'clock in the morning, and all the worship was pre-recorded and posted on YouTube, and people could watch it at any time, and that was lovely. And people came on Sunday mornings to enjoy coffee hour and to have conversation with other people and to connect. And that was working really well. And I know that some of our people were watching the worship services before coffee hour on Sunday mornings. And I know that this congregation also has part of the identity is around being a congregation that has a lot of visitors, a lot of tourists, people coming through all the time. And that has been absent, just truly almost completely absent since the pandemic started.
That's true.
And my colleagues who have continued to offer worship services, even if they're pre-recorded and they're played on Sunday mornings, have continued to receive visitors every Sunday since the pandemic started. And so in conversation with leaders and with others, I started asking about putting in place some different things, like having the link that people can hit on the website, the Connect Online button, so that people can go directly into our Zoom room. They could join us right now if they wanted to. I'm glad that they aren't. And then also, like, what could we do to make it so that people would want to come, right? People come to church because they want to be in community. People don't come to church to watch videos on YouTube by themselves. And that's not a criticism of watching videos on YouTube yourselves. I think we all do that. And people come to church because they want to be with other people. And so what can we do to change that experience, to invite people to want to actually be with us? Coffee hour is really intimidating, whether it's in person or online. I imagine that it's like 10 times harder to try and engage in a coffee hour with people that you completely don't know online than it is in person. And that is already like high stakes, right? I didn't go to coffee hour at my home congregation for weeks after I started attending the services because they were completely overwhelming. So I can't imagine what it would be like to try and jump into a conversation with people that you don't really know electronically. And so I started asking people, what can we do differently? And my thought was, because we already had people that I knew, we've got a handful or two of people who are already watching the worship services at 10 o'clock in the morning on Sundays. Why don't we just host a watch party and invite other people in? And we'll just do that at 10 o'clock. Well, through these conversations that we had over the course of a few weeks, people were like, well, what about coffee hour? And it was like, well, we're just going to do that after the worship service. And people were like, okay, but then what does that look like? I want to know what it looks like. And it was like, well, we'll probably just do like an open discussion. People were like, no, I like the breakout rooms. Okay, then we'll do the breakout rooms. And, you know, people were like, well, is the YouTube link still going to be available on Saturday? Because I really like to watch the video on Saturday night before I go to bed. Okay, then we'll put it up on Saturday and let you watch it before you go to bed. I mean, like, we're in a pandemic right now, and I'm trying to be as accommodating to everybody's needs as possible. But over the course of those conversations that we had with congregants, which ended up being probably between 35 and 40 people, people expressed their needs, and we completely reshaped what I had expected the Sunday morning experience might look like into something that seems like it will meet the needs of the congregation and also open us up to visitors. And so I'm hoping that this process will allow us to invite people into having more of those conversations, so that the ministry and the leadership of the congregation are meeting the needs of our congregants, both now and in the future. And that we're asking people to have a role in shaping what that looks like, so that people aren't just making decisions and saying, I mean, like, we could have just done, well, we're just going to do 10 o'clock in the morning and that's what we're going to do because that's what the minister said. But that's not really what I wanted. I wanted to have those conversations. It was important to me. And so by inviting in those conversations with people, we came up with something that people are like, I'm really excited to try this. That's awesome.
The next thing on my mind, I'm guessing if I watch the recording of this, I'll probably get a thread of what I'm about to ask throughout. But I'm going to ask it directly to let you get a chance to put the thoughts together, which is, does shared leadership have a spiritual growth connection? How would shared leadership and spiritual growth come together for any of us?
Going back to the Chalice Lighting from Pamela Romancic, and thinking about the words from Mark Morrison Reed about the bonds that we share with each other and how we grow both roots and wings in our mutuality. To me, that's probably the biggest way that spiritual growth happens, is by being in relationship with each other. And that doesn't necessarily mean just affirming what the other person's saying all the time. I think that part of spiritual growth is around challenging each other and and not necessarily in a competitive way, but in a way that says to, like, let's take that a little bit deeper. Let's explore that a little bit more. Kind of like we've been doing with the covenant groups and using worship themes this year. Taking that time, making the space to have a little bit more conversation, to look at something from different lenses. And it is in those relationships, I think, that we experience some of our best personal growth. I was talking with one of our congregants one day, and there's that quote, and I think it's Ram Dass who said, like, if you think that you're enlightened, go home for a week and spend time with your family. And so, like we can do a lot of really great growth ourselves. We can do meditation and whatever practices we have, yoga, drawing, gardening. But it's in the relationship, and it's the way that we are with each other that really helps us understand our growth, what direction we're moving in, where we might have more space to grow than we thought we did. Whatever that looks like, that comes through the clearest in the relationships that we keep. And so by inviting people into shared leadership, and inviting people into the conversations across the board about different aspects of congregational life, that will lead us in the direction of deeper spiritual growth. And not only as individuals, but also as a community, right? And I think that that's one of the beautiful things about being in a religious community, being in a congregation, is that it's not just about my own growth, but about the growth also that we have together, the way that we can learn to trust each other, the way that we can learn to be vulnerable together. And that will also help accelerate our growth.
For some reason, that feels like a really good place to end, with the invitation and the opportunity for growth. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so right now. I was really looking forward to just having this conversation, because every time we do, we have really great conversations, and I have just enjoyed every single one of them. I think the only other thing that I would say at this point in time is that if anybody, any of our congregation would be interested in exploring more conversation, I'd be happy to allow that opportunity. I'm planning to set up some more sort of open coffee hour, or not coffee hour, open office hours. I can do this. Sort of open office hours for people to drop in for conversation. I know some of the conversation things that were being hosted earlier in the year, mostly before I came, and then a little bit into the time that I came, weren't as well attended. And so we stopped doing them, but I'm happy to start that back up as well if people are interested in that. And I just want people to know that we're looking forward to, this is a conversation. We want it to be a conversation. We don't want it to just be like, oh, we're just going to make these changes. We want it to be a conversation.
I'd also just throw in that you're really pretty good about responding to emails. So if somebody had a question, I would suppose you'd answer it that way if it was appropriate.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place,
Our closing words today, as ever, come from Jean Harrison Newyar. She has written in The Gift of Faith these words. In the lore of ancient China, there is a story of a philosopher who was asked, "Where is the road called hope?" He replied, "It does not exist, but as people move forward upon it, it comes into being." I invite you in this moment, in this journey towards shared leadership, to continue moving forward on this road called hope with me.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the light of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the light of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
I hope that you found meaning in today's service. Again, I invite you to consider joining us sometime on Sunday morning when we gather for worship as a community. The service starts at 10:30 a.m. on Zoom. You are also welcome to drop into our Zoom room coffee hour any Sunday at 11:30 for friendly conversation. If you are new to the area or just learning about Unitarian Universalism, we'd love to meet you in one of our newcomer discussions, which are held on the second Sunday of each month at 12:15. Please refer to our website for more information on how to connect with us on Zoom. If you use the Connect Online button, it will take you directly to any of our activities. We look forward to meeting you.